I should have never clicked on that link. It wasn't like I was out there actively searching for something dark or twisted. I was just curious, like most people are when they first hear about the dark web. You see it mentioned in documentaries, or hear about it in passing, but no one ever tells you the whole truth. The truth about how it changes you, how it consumes you. It all started one night after a long, boring week at work. I was sitting in my cramped apartment in New York City, scrolling through Reddit, when I stumbled across a thread titled "I Dare You to Try." The title was innocuous enough, but when I opened it, I was immediately hit with a rush of dark curiosity. There was no way to know for sure, but the post looked legitimate. A user named Jacob123 had posted instructions on how to access the dark web, claiming it was the true underbelly of the internet, a place far more sinister than anyone could imagine. I remember feeling an odd mix of intrigue and caution as I read through his message. He warned that the content there could be disturbing, but there was something about the idea of exploring this hidden digital world that felt like a dare, a challenge I couldn't resist. I had read stories about people losing themselves to the depths of the dark web, but the idea that I, of all people, would ever end up in that kind of danger seemed absurd. So, I thought, what's the harm in just looking? The instructions Jacob gave were simple enough. It wasn't as complicated as I had imagined. A few tools, a special browser, nothing that could raise any alarms. I downloaded the Tor browser, just like he suggested, and typed in the URL he provided. My heart was pounding by the time I hit enter, and as the screen loaded, I saw nothing but blackness. A blank page, and then a link, a single underlined text that read "Welcome." I clicked it without thinking twice. The moment I did, the page flickered, and then, without warning, the screen changed. I froze. It wasn't like anything I had ever seen before. This wasn't a simple website or even a chat room. It was more like a gateway. And as I scrolled through, my stomach sank. There were images that no one should ever see, videos that no one should ever watch. Some of them were so disturbing that I quickly clicked away, but the content was everywhere, always at the edge of my vision, ready to drag me in. But there was one thread that caught my eye. Its title, "The Game." Couldn't look away. Something about it seemed almost inviting, like a siren's call. Without thinking, I clicked on it. The moment the page opened, I knew I had made a mistake. The page was simple, almost empty, save for a single line of text that read, "Welcome to the game. Your challenge begins now." Beneath it was a countdown timer ticking down in real time. 30 minutes. The seconds seemed to stretch on, like each one was mocking me for not turning away. I thought about closing the window, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the curiosity. Maybe it was the idea of this game that promised something bigger than just a glimpse into the dark web. Maybe it was just that little voice inside my head that told me, "You're already in too deep." So, I did what anyone with a flicker of insanity would do. I clicked the button beneath the countdown. The moment I did, the timer reset, and the screen changed again. The page shifted into a series of instructions, each one more cryptic than the last. They told me to follow the clues, but there was no clear direction, no explanation. Just a series of riddles and strange puzzles. The first one was simple enough. Find the door behind the mirror. At first, I thought it was a metaphor. Maybe there was some hidden meaning I was supposed to decipher. But then I looked closer at the page, and there it was, a reflection of the text in the lower corner of the screen. A small, nearly invisible URL. It led me to another page, and then another, and another. As I followed the links, I realized something strange. I wasn't alone. There were other people playing the game, too. I could see their usernames posted on the side of the screen, a continuous stream of people joining in. But what struck me as odd was that there were no comments, no discussions. Just usernames and silent participation. I started to get nervous. The deeper I went, the stranger the clues became. They weren't just riddles anymore. They were personal. "Your fear is your greatest weakness." I froze. How did it know what I was afraid of? I didn't share anything with anyone. Not on this site, not even on the main page. But somehow, it felt like something was watching me, waiting for me to slip up. The next page loaded, and I wasn't prepared for what I saw. A black and white image appeared. A distorted face with hollow eyes staring directly into the camera. No context, no explanation, just that chilling image, frozen on the screen. And then the next instruction flashed. You're closer now. One more step. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling as I realized I had made a terrible mistake. But something inside me, a sickening combination of morbid curiosity and a sense of compulsion, urged me to keep going. I needed to finish this. I needed to know what came next. What I didn't realize at that moment was that this game wasn't about winning. It was about survival. I could feel my pulse in my throat now. Each click seemed to lead me deeper into something I couldn't control. The clues were no longer just riddles or puzzles. They were personal challenges. And with each one, I could feel myself being pushed further and further into a world I had no business being in. By the time I had reached the next stage of the game, the page had completely changed. It was no longer just text or images. It was interactive. It gave me options, multiple choices that felt like I was walking a thin line between curiosity and danger. The first option read, "Click to enter the hidden room." I should have stopped there, should have logged off and never looked back. But I didn't. I clicked it. The screen blacked out and a new page opened, but this time, there was no countdown, no riddles, just an empty, dimly lit room. The air felt cold. I could almost hear the silence pressing in on me. In the corner of the screen, a small box appeared. It was a chat window, blinking with a new message. "You're not alone here. They're watching." I immediately felt a wave of nausea. How did they know? How could they know? Before I had a chance to react, the room shifted. The walls seemed to close in around me, and a low hum began to fill my speakers. Something was moving on the screen, just out of sight. I couldn't make it out at first, but the feeling of being watched intensified. It was like something was there with me, in the room. I stared at the box in the corner, willing it to stop. But the messages kept coming. "They can hear you. They can see you." And then it happened. The shadows in the corner of the room seemed to solidify, and the dim light flickered, revealing a figure standing in the doorway of the room. A tall man, dressed in black, with a mask that covered his face. He just stood there, motionless, staring at the screen. Couldn't move, couldn't look away. It was as if my entire body had been paralyzed. My hand hovered over the mouse, unsure whether I should click away or let the nightmare unfold. Another message popped up. "Don't run. It's too late for that now." I froze. I was already in too deep. Then the figure in the doorway moved, slowly, methodically, and I knew, deep down, that this was no longer just a game. It had become something much darker, much more real than I could have ever imagined. I backed away from the screen, heart pounding, but the image on the page didn't change. The man kept coming step by step. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I noticed the date at the top of the page, the timestamp that had just appeared. It read, "Your time is almost up." And that's when I realized I wasn't just playing a game. I was the game. Couldn't breathe. My body felt like it was encased in concrete. I wanted to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. My hand trembled, hovering over the mouse, unsure whether I should click anything. The figure in the doorway was getting closer now, step by slow step, its head slightly tilted as if studying me. The dim light flickered again, casting shadows that danced unnervingly across the room. "You're so close." The message appeared on the screen, and I felt an icy chill run through me. I looked around the room, as if expecting someone to be standing right behind me, but it was only me and the screen, that damned screen that had drawn me in deeper than I'd ever imagined. I thought about closing the tab. I could just shut it down, forget about everything, pretend it was all some sick joke, but I couldn't. It was too late for that. The timer on the page had reset again, and this time it was counting down faster than before. The seconds were ticking away, each one more urgent than the last. I didn't know what was going to happen when it reached 0, but I didn't want to find out. I glanced back at the chat box, the small blinking text that I had been ignoring. It now read, "One last decision. Choose wisely." And below it were two options, written in bold letters. 1. Leave the game now. You'll never know what you missed. 2. Stay. Finish the game. See what happens next. For a brief, fleeting moment, I considered option 1. Just leave. Walk away. But then I remembered what had happened when I tried to back out earlier. Nothing had changed. It had followed me. No matter how many times I tried to escape, it always dragged me back. The timer continued to tick, and panic started to creep up on me. I had no choice but to choose. I clicked on option 2. The moment I did, the entire screen went black. I sat there, staring at the emptiness, waiting for something to happen. Nothing. Absolute silence. I was frozen in my chair, every fiber of my being screaming at me to just leave, to run, to escape. But my body refused to obey. Then the faintest sound emerged from the speakers. A low, guttural laugh that made my skin crawl. The page blinked back into existence, but it was different now. There were no more instructions, no more clues. Instead, there was only one word: run. And then the figure from earlier, its tall, imposing form, appeared again, but this time it wasn't in the doorway. It was right there on the screen, staring at me. Its mask was cracked, its eyes hollow, and it took a step forward, as if it had crossed over from the digital world into my reality. I don't know what happened next. My heart was racing so loudly that I couldn't hear the next message on the screen. All I remember is the overwhelming urge to flee, to disconnect. I slammed the laptop shut, but the image of that face, those hollow, soulless eyes, lingered behind my eyelids. For the next few hours, I sat in silence, too afraid to move, too afraid to do anything but breathe. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that it was just some sick prank, some twisted game. But deep down, I knew that I wasn't alone. That thing, it was still out there, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. I spent the rest of the night in a daze. My mind kept replaying the last few moments on the screen. The figure, its empty eyes, the word, run. I couldn't escape it. It haunted me. I was convinced that if I even so much as turned on my computer again, it would somehow find me, like the game had crossed the line between digital and physical, and now it knew where I was. It knew who I was. I stayed up all night, staring at the blank wall of my apartment, too terrified to sleep, too afraid to face the darkness that was slowly creeping into my thoughts. By morning, I was exhausted, my body aching from the tension, but I couldn't bring myself to relax. I kept expecting a knock on the door, a sound from somewhere outside, anything to prove that whatever had been on the screen had followed me. But there was nothing. I tried to tell myself it was over. I tried to convince myself that I had been caught up in a sick game, a twisted prank designed to mess with my head. But the fear, it wouldn't leave. And it wasn't just the fear of what I saw. It was the feeling that I hadn't seen the worst of it. That whatever I had stumbled upon was much darker than I could ever comprehend. I did what anyone in my situation would do. I turned off my laptop, shoved it in a drawer, and went about my day like nothing had happened. But every time I passed the desk where it sat, I felt that same chill creeping down my spine. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was waiting for me. A week went by, and I thought I had finally moved on. I didn't open the dark web again, didn't even think about it. But then the messages started. It started with a text. Just a number, no name, no contact information. The number wasn't familiar, but I still clicked on it because I was an idiot. You didn't finish the game. I stared at the text, my heart dropping into my stomach. My hand shook as I quickly deleted the message, but when I looked at the clock, the time on my phone was frozen. 3:33 a.m., the exact moment I had first clicked the link a week before. It wasn't over. Couldn't be. I turned off my phone, tried to shake the dread that was pooling in my chest. But it didn't matter. The next day, a package arrived at my door. It was small, unmarked. No return address. My breath caught in my throat as I held it in my hands. There was no note, no message. Just a single, unremarkable USB drive. A chill ran through me. I couldn't open it. I wanted to throw it away, burn it, destroy it somehow. But I couldn't. Felt like it was a part of the game. a continuation of the nightmare. So I did what I knew I shouldn't. I plugged it into my computer. The moment the screen lit up, my blood ran cold. The first thing I saw was the same black and white image of the face, the distorted figure that had haunted me. But this time it was different. It was clearer. The face was closer now, staring directly at me, and there was something more terrifying about it. A sense of recognition, a feeling that it knew me. And then the message appeared, written in stark, bold text. "You thought you could escape." The screen flickered again, and a video began to play. It was grainy, distorted, but the content was unmistakable. It was me, walking around my apartment, looking at the screen, unaware. I froze, my fingers numb against the keyboard. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could this be possible? But then the camera zoomed in on my face in the video, and that's when I saw it. The figure standing just behind me, watching me from the shadows. I jumped back, knocking over my chair, but the image stayed frozen on the screen, like it was just waiting for me to understand. It was still here, and I realized too late that the game had never really ended. It was just waiting for me to fall into its trap again. Couldn't breathe. My lungs were suffocating under the weight of what I had just seen. That figure, standing in the shadows of my apartment, watching me. It was impossible. How could anyone have gotten into my apartment? How could they have filmed me without my knowledge? I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing as panic took over. My thoughts were racing faster than I could process them. I thought about calling the police, telling them about the strange video, the figure in the background. But I knew deep down they wouldn't believe me. There was no way to explain how a video could show something that had only happened minutes before. I ran to the door, checked the locks. Everything was fine. I checked the windows, the hallways, but nothing was out of place. Still, the sense of impending doom gnawed at me, making me feel like something was lurking just around the corner. My apartment felt smaller now, suffocating. The walls seemed to close in with each breath I took. I grabbed my phone, ready to turn it off, to destroy anything that could keep me connected to whatever was happening. But before I could, the same unknown number texted me again. "You're almost there." I slammed my fist down on the desk in frustration. The game had followed me again. Even now, after everything I'd seen, it wasn't over. I couldn't escape it. It wasn't just in my computer anymore. It was everywhere. I backed away from the screen, but that's when I saw it. Another file had appeared on the desktop. A new folder, one that I hadn't seen before. It was labeled Step 7. I didn't want to open it. I knew I shouldn't, but my hand moved involuntarily. I clicked on it. Inside the folder were several video files. I hesitated, my stomach turning. But one file in particular stood out. It was named Final Choice MP4. I didn't want to watch it. I was terrified of what might be in there, but something pulled me in. A part of me wanted to know what came next, even if it meant facing whatever nightmare awaited. I double-clicked it. The screen went black, and then a new image appeared. It was me, in my apartment, just like before. But this time, the figure wasn't in the background. It was standing directly behind me. I could see its hollow eyes now, the cracks in the mask, the twisted expression on its face. It was real. I gasped and jerked back, but the video didn't stop. It continued to play, and now I could hear a voice. Faint at first, but growing louder. The voice was distorted, almost mechanical, but the words were clear. "You failed." I felt the floor beneath me shift, as if the very foundation of my apartment was being altered. The walls seemed to pulse, the shadows on the screen moving, as if the figure was coming closer. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the voice spoke again, louder this time, echoing inside my skull. "There's only one way out. Finish the game." I stared at the screen, heart pounding in my chest. What was I supposed to do? How could I finish the game? It was already too late. It had already crossed the line into the physical world, into my life. The thought of completing it made my blood run cold. But there was no choice anymore. The figure on the screen stepped forward, its eyes locking with mine through the digital divide. Its presence felt too real, too alive. I felt its gaze burning into me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I understood what was really happening. This wasn't just some game. The final choice was a trap. No matter what I did, I was already part of the game. There was no escaping it. I closed my eyes, but the images kept flashing in my mind. The figure, the dark shadows, the suffocating feeling that followed me wherever I went. The game had won. And then I heard it. A soft knock on my door. My heart stopped. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. The knock came again, louder this time. I slowly walked to the door, my legs shaking, my mind racing. But when I opened it, there was nothing there. Just an empty hallway, as silent as the grave. But on the floor, in front of me, lay a small, black box. It was identical to the one I had received a week before, the one with the USB drive. I looked down at it, trembling, and for the first time I knew the game wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The box lay in front of me, staring back like some dark omen. I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. That feeling of being watched, of something just out of sight, lingering in the shadows, was suffocating. My stomach churned with dread, and every nerve in my body screamed for me to walk away. But I couldn't. I bent down slowly, heart hammering in my chest, and picked up the box. It was cold, too cold, like it had been sitting in the snow for hours. The smooth, matte surface almost felt wrong in my hands. It wasn't just an object, it felt like an invitation, a final challenge, like the game had been waiting for me to reach this moment. I glanced down the hallway, half expecting to see someone standing there, watching me. But the building was silent, empty, just like the screen that had once filled my life with twisted games. My phone vibrated in my pocket, breaking the silence. I pulled it out, hands shaking, and saw the same unknown number flash on the screen. Open it. There's no turning back now. I felt like I was suffocating. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. But I knew it was. And the fear that had been eating at me for days finally took full hold. I had no choice. There was no escape. I pressed the button on the box, and the lid popped open. Inside, there was another USB drive. No note, no instructions, just that damn drive. I don't know what possessed me, but I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered to life, and for a brief moment, everything seemed normal. But then, the familiar sound began, low and guttural, that haunting laugh that had tormented me from the very beginning. The screen darkened, and the words appeared. "You've made your choice." Before I could react, a new image popped up. It wasn't a video this time, but an image that burned itself into my memory. It was a dark room, pitch black, except for the faint outline of a door. The same figure from before, the one that had been haunting me, stood in front of it, its back to the camera, but I could still feel its eyes on me. There was no text, no instructions, no final decision, just the door. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. What was I supposed to do now? Was this the end of the game? Or was it just the beginning of something far worse? I looked around my apartment, but the shadows seemed to stretch farther than they ever had before. It was as if the darkness in the room had come alive, as if it was waiting for me to make the wrong move. A single notification blinked on the screen, pulling me back to reality. One final step. Open the door. I knew in that moment I had no choice. I had already played the game. I had already given in. But I couldn't open the door. Not when I knew what it meant. Not when I realized, with a sickening clarity, that the game wasn't just some twisted web of lies. It was real. The shadows were real. The figure was real. And no matter how much I wanted to escape, I was already trapped. I backed away from the screen, slamming the laptop shut. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. The terror that gripped me was absolute. And I knew deep down that opening that door would be the final step. The door in the game. The door in my life. I felt a knock again, softer this time. And as I slowly turned around, I knew with a certainty I couldn't deny, the game had followed me. It was here, in my apartment, In my life, I walked toward the door, heart in my throat. There was no turning back. But when I opened it, there was no one there, just the same black box on the floor. The game, it seemed, would never end.